The color of this pen is... The color of this pen is... The color of the pen that I hold in my hand is royal blue.
Jim Carrey may play the extreme in Liar Liar, but everyday people use self-deception to motivate themselves. It's happening all around us. And taking that even further, our next guest says that lying to yourself improves your ability to lie to everybody else. With us today is Robert Trivers, a biology professor at Rutgers University and an expert on deception. He's the author of The Folly of Fools, The Logic of Deceit and Self-Deception in Human Life. Good day for this. Indeed. I suppose every day is a good day for this. You say, many people see optimism and self-deception as a defense strategy to stay sane, to maintain a sense of sanity in a harsh world. You argue that it is a psychological attack mechanism. What does that mean?
It means that the major function of self-deception is the better to deceive others. So in that sense, it's an aggressive or an offensive strategy. It's not defensive. The psychologists interpret it generally as it's a defensive strategy to keep us happy. And they cite the fact that depressed people do not engage much in self-inflation. So then they argue that if we were all realistic, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, we'd be depressed. But that's getting cause and effect badly backwards, because when you're depressed is not a good time for self-inflation. If anything, it's a good time for a little bit of self-criticism. But if you cannot pull off self-inflation very good when you're depressed. If I'm walking along depressed and saying I'm better looking than everybody, it's implausible on its face. So psychologists have a history of getting things backwards because they don't come out of any kind of functional, i.e. evolutionary understanding of why we would have been selected in the first place.
So walk us through the benefits, or what is the forward or the non-backwards way to deal with the issue of self-deception? In other words, if I say, okay, it's okay for me to deceive myself that I'm the greatest anchor man that ever walked the face of the earth because it makes me feel better about myself and I'm less depressed and I don't all that sort of thing, or I'm the whatever I may think about myself or want to deceive myself to.
No,
you say that that's an aggressive act towards everybody else.
Yes, because I don't see you as pumping yourself up as being the greatest anchor person, as being in order to improve your happiness so much as to fool the rest of us into thinking you're a better anchor person than you really are.
Right.
And insofar as you believe your deception or your lies,
what if I think I'm terrible? What if I think I'm the worst anchor that ever walked the face? What if the self-deception is negative?
Well, that's a very good question, and there are a minority of people that practice the diminutive side. So we can show that there are some people that regard themselves as uglier than they really are, and that is sometimes traced to a certain kind of parental upbringing in which they lack a basic kind of self-confidence. So yes, for a minority of people, they self-deceive downwards, and it's not clear that that's to their benefit at all.
At the end of the day, there's actual biology here. You were explaining to me during the commercial break that living in a world of deception and living in a state of self-deception is biologically harmful.
Yes, absolutely. And we know that from a variety of angles. But let me give you one that relates to something you were talking about earlier in your show today, which is the whole Penn State scandal. We know that trauma experienced in childhood has negative consequences on health in adulthood, but sexual trauma is the most harmful. And we're pretty sure the reason for that is that sexual trauma is the trauma that's least shared with other people. So it's and sexual trauma is typically girls and not boys, as in Penn State. But it's shameful. They're under threats. They don't even tell their mother. If it's their stepfather, they don't want to cause problems at home, etc., etc. And it's the suppression of the trauma, not sharing it with anyone, that is the really costly side of it in their adult health and in the functioning of their adult immune system.
But so that is a big statement, because the world lives in this view that trauma itself is the thing. And it's not to suggest that you are diminishing trauma, whatever that trauma may be. But you are suggesting that the mechanism, that how we resolve trauma after it happens, whatever the trauma may be, is at least as significant, if not more significant, than the trauma itself. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and I'll mention beautiful work that was done by a very brilliant psychologist named Jamie Pennebaker down at the University of Texas. He brought people into the lab. He said, tell us about the most traumatic event in your life. Might have been that, might have been the divorce of their parents when they were young, whatever it was. Write about it, think about it a bit. Then he splits them into two groups. One, write about their trauma 3 successive days for 20 minutes in a private journal. The other write about what they did that day. Now, the people that are writing about their trauma, their mood goes down because they're dwelling on something painful, but their immune system starts improving immediately. And 3 months later, their immune system is elevated, and now their mood is elevated also. The control group, of course, is just flatlined. Now he's done deeper analyses where he's done a linguistic analysis where he can show what the linguistic features are of those that get the most improvement from writing in what is a private journal. That's not even sharing it with someone else. Now, obviously, we didn't evolve writing in private journals, so it's probably more we share it with a friend. But you can even share things with the Lord in prayer, as they put it. And that probably is beneficial in that you're sharing it with someone, just as a private journal. There may not be anyone at the other end of the line, so to speak, but you are sharing it, and you think you're sharing it, and it's beneficial to you.
And biologically, the act of actually sharing whatever it is unbelievable. I want to read an article from Matt Taibbi in Rolling Stone about the occupation.
Yes.
Which it has its own aspects of response to a feeling of deception, a rejection, an ambient rejection of a culture of deception that starts with the banks, as Taibbi put it, but seems to have expanded beyond the banks to a broader rejection of deception. And he says, this is to quote Matt, he says, that to me is what Occupy Wall Street is addressing. People don't know exactly what they want, but as one friend of mine put it, they know one thing, blank this blank, okay? We want something different,
right.
A different life with different values, or at least a chance at different values. Your interpretations of the occupation as a rejection of a sense of deceiving authority.
Well, I don't have anything especially good to say on that, but I would say one thing that amuses me. If you ask the people with a lot of money to pay a little bit more in taxes, you have a bunch of people shrieking, class warfare, that's class warfare. Well, no. Class warfare was when the peasants took their, weapons to the king's palace and confronted him. That's class warfare. To ask someone to pay their fair share of taxes, that's class warfare? That's utter nonsense. So now these people that are occupying warfare, occupying Wall Street, they're practicing a tiny bit. It's not even class warfare. But one guy had a sign that I loved at the beginning, hungry, eat a banker. So I suppose that sounds like class warfare. But really, they are bringing back a little bit of the class contradiction and sticking it in everyone's face and saying, come on now. Mm-hmm. You're talking all this BS all the time, just flooding our airwaves and so on, and talking nonsense about timid suggestions to have a more equitable distribution of the wealth of this country.
Right. Professor, it's a real pleasure.
Likewise.
I like when professors visit and we learn stuff on this show. It's learning for free in public. Heck, they pay me. Professor, it's a pleasure. Have a good weekend. Robert Trivers, the author of The Folly of Fools, professor at Rutgers University. There's the book cover.